Hello guys, today I want to talk about one of my favorite series of all time, Berserk, and do a introduction slash review for it. First off, for those that are not familiar with Berserk, it includes a lot of sexual and violent images, so if you are disturbed by them, this is definitely not your series. There are many aspects of Berserk I like, and there are some technical, what I would consider failures that I will also point out. But I want to keep this video from spoilers as much as possible, so I will keep them at bay and talk really generally about the series. Also, to go into detail would be really difficult because there are many layers. So, well, let's go on. I'm gonna be talking mainly about the manga. I will also make some references to the anime a little bit later. But first off, the art style. Kentaro Miura already had a really clear visual style in mind since the beginning. While there are some technical, artistic failures, I would say there, like overuse of blending for shading and the like. There are really nitpicky things, and you would expect most series in the beginning stages not to be as good as they are later on. Then again, it was already really high quality. I doubt many authors would dare do something of that caliber, and it only gets better with time. There's actually this really famous picture online where it basically shows the face of the main character, Guts, throughout the different volumes, and just with that, you can already see that the style has changed for the better over time. Though there are some features that have changed due to varying reasons, and you'll get to know those in the manga. So, in terms of the visual style, it's really powerful. The imagery, it draws from many inspirations. For instance, there is sci-fi. You will know when the sci-fi reference is. You will definitely get it. If not where it comes from, you will get that it is from the sci-fi world. There is also references to obviously fantasy, to medieval Europe, Middle East, and also as far as India. There are also references to different mythologies across the series, though I'll keep myself from really going into them. You can obviously expect some more abstract versions as well. You will know this from the very first pages, but there are some real mythology influences there. So it, visually, aesthetically, it's rather interesting. If I had to describe it, basically in one word, it's like a baroque painting. It has all the beautiful and grotesque images all collapsed together with the most dramatic use of lighting. So yeah, it is really appealing in that sense. Then in terms of the plot, I cannot really say much in terms of it because it is really character self-driven, and to even reveal some of the major aspects about it would basically spoil the whole experience for you. So sorry, I cannot really do that department. What I can do is the narrative choices, and here is probably one of the weakest parts of Berserk. While the plot itself is really good, you do see why the characters would do what they want to do. Occasionally, there are some narrative choices that are a little bit poor. For instance, character may actually explain what the what the place's history is, and why they got to the current situation, which sometimes can come off as really cheap, especially if it comes from a younger character. Though over time, Kentaro Miura has learned how to do it in a more subtle way, and occasionally he subverts the expectation later on. So the exposition actually works rather well, uh, especially later on. This is a theme that goes throughout the whole thing. It only gets better the more you actually watch from it, except for one or two nitpicky things about a certain arc, which most people will agree is just no, it was not necessary. Well, leaving that behind. So the plot is really good, I must say. Some of the narrative choices are a little bit poor, but overall the quality in terms of the story is really high. especially because the plot is character driven, which takes us to the actual characters. Even speaking of the characters themselves, would they spoil many of the aspects of the series? Because um, I can say there is a shift of main cast. You will know the reasons why later on. If you read the series or watch the anime or the films. But even to talk about the characters, except for the main character, would spoil a lot of the series. So I'll have to leave it there. Even talking about the main character, I need to leave many of the things in general. Um, to say the least, he had a really dark past, and this already makes him a character who, in many levels, may be different from you, but you can emphasize with him because maybe you don't correlate to each individual thing he goes through, but you can understand what the character's feeling throughout the series. So that's a really good point on his advantage. Then he is really appealing in the sense that he is a man that is basically fighting against the world, and not in a political sense. No, it's just he has the odds stacked against him, and he still manages to fight on and survive. Not always in the best of ways, and definitely not unscratched. So it makes it really appealing because even in such a dark world as the series is, you will know this from the first page. So I don't need to tell you that the mood generally is pessimistic. Having such a powerful character is shining. It's a small light in such a dark world, and it makes it really appealing in that sense. So he is a really strong, durable, interest-driven character, and I wouldn't say really interest. It's more goal-driven character. So he is. I don't know how really to say it, but basically he fights for his own ideal. Well, not ideals. It is difficult to say, but I must say he is understandable. He's still really strong, but he is basically a man that does not give up ever. He has gone through really deep traumatical experiences, which have made him the man that he is today. And he basically cannot guarantee that the people around him are going to be safe because he engages with in combats with many different monsters and the like. So being with him can be quite dangerous. So even the people that support him and such, as much as he likes them, he has mixed feelings about having them around him if he actually grows fond of them. So yeah, he's a rather complex character, and actually he is funny enough in such a really different world to our own, which is fantasy, medieval period, and really dark. He feels really human because he basically goes, I'm not going to say with whom or what, but he goes through basically every aspect of human nature. He experiences awe of events and other characters. He goes through love, hate, envy. Basically, if there's a human emotion, he will have gone through it, and that makes him, ironically enough, in such a really different world to our own, a really realistic human. He doesn't feel like he's just a character. He's a little bit more. He transcends the page. So in that regard, Guts is a really powerful character. I've gone on too much already on him. I'm going to talk in general of the other members of the cast. There are some minor characters which appear really rarely. Generally, they're quite quirky if they don't appear that often, and you'll be able to tell them apart rather easily. But they are in their own ways charming or otherwise interesting. it's sometimes in a really dark and gritty sense, so not probably appealing to every audience, but still. If the character has a little bit more screen time, really page time in this case, generally they have more developed goals and paths that you actually get to see. And I must say, most of the people that have difficult present or troublesome past, which makes you understand how they got to be such durable people. So in terms of the character cast, especially for the main protagonist, it is really, really strong. Now, in terms of, I did mention I would talk about the anime. The anime does not exactly correspond to the manga. I must say it starts later on. In the manga, there's eventually a flashback to basically understand how Guts got to be the man who is at the moment in the manga. So basically, the series focuses on that, but even then, there are some design choices that have been made that basically change the meaning of various parts of it, and that includes some of the emotions felt. And I must say, do watch the series if you have the time. If you can do more than, if you can watch or read more than one, it's definitely worth watching, because even though there are some animation problems and such because they did not have that much budget to do the work with, you actually see again an art evolution that gets quite interesting. And I must say it's a really different experience seeing it on the screen rather than on a page. So it is worth visiting it. And then the films. The films basically cover the same as the anime did, just it's been revitalized in terms of imagery. There's a lot of CGI involved, while there are also drawings, but it's also worth looking at. It's a little bit more leaning towards the manga, because there are some design choices that were suppressed in the anime because they were considered too violent that are in fact in the film. Actually, there's some of the scenes of the film were censored from being put on the cinema, but you can still watch them in the DVD. So definitely do watch them if you have the time. But if you had to stick to one thing, I would definitely stick with the manga. The reasons why it's been longer. It covers way more plot. It has all of the plot, whereas whereas the anime and the films only cover a certain aspect of it. There are many details that you just lack even in those arcs in the anime and the films. So it's definitely worth looking at reading the manga as your main source material. However, I must say, this year, 2016, there has been news that basically we are going to have a continuation of the anime, and it's going to be basically on the actual manga story apart from the flashback. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and I'll probably do a future video actually talking a little bit the difference what the manga is with the newer 2016 anime is. So yeah, definitely Berserk is not a series for everyone, but if you can deal with the sexual and violent imagery and you want a really character-driven plot, it's definitely worth looking at. And finally, there is one topic I want to talk about, Berserk, that makes it stand out from many different series. And well, there are many series that cover one topic in terms of humanity, but Berserk seems to basically give an opinion about every aspect of it. Without running into spoilers, here's a few things you can actually expect. The feeling of powerlessness, religion, both extremist and respectful, the meaning of politics, whether they can be corrupt, honest, a mixture of both. It deals with topics of war, of love, of partnerships of different kinds. There's relationships. There's the darkest side of humanity, and actually it gets to the point where you ask yourself whether who's the real monster here, the monster or the human? And some a series that can actually evoke all of these feelings. I know it's a long running series, but um, a series that can give you all of these topics to talk about. I'll probably do sometime in the future or something less general about the series. It's really worth looking at. I mean, you may not agree with the particular outcomes and opinions that the series may have, but the actual questioning of many aspects of humanity uh, within a fictional world, that is so different from our current one. It's just amazing. It really is, and definitely, if you can stand the violent and sexual imagery, if you like the battle scenes, if you like a character-driven plot, definitely recommend watching Berserk. Uh, I, I was gonna talk a little bit about the world, but even that was slightly covered by the imagery. You can expect the things that were mentioned in the imagery bit before to be present in the world, so you pretty much should have a really rough idea of it. But the best thing I would recommend you to do is basically read the first chapter of Berserk, and while not everything is shown there, it should be a really good hook. And obviously, warning for ages 18 or over from most of the countries in the world. In some countries, it may be illegal to see these things, so be mindful about that. And yeah, basically, I recommend this series to everyone that likes those themes or can stand them. This is Rotheart, and I'm signing out.